Hi, my name is Flavio Remus, and this is my podcast on consistency and standards, one of the 10 heuristics created by Jakob Nielsen to evaluate websites. First, I believe it is important to explain the concepts of both consistency and standards. We will analyze them separately, and we will start with consistency. Looking up in a dictionary, consistency is defined as agreement or harmony of parts or features to one another or a whole. I'll try to clarify this point by taking some tangible examples from what can be seen in a common kitchen.
Look at the cooker. A good example of consistency is the fact that all the knobs behave the same way. To heat up the cooking stoves, you always have to turn the knobs to the right, and to turn the stoves off, you turn them in the opposite direction. There would be inconsistency if the knobs did not behave all the same. For example, if you have to turn some knobs to the right and some others to the left to heat up the stoves. In this case, consequences can even be disastrous.
Now, we look at consistency in the specific environment of websites. Jakob Nielsen stated that users should not have to wonder whether different words, situations, or actions mean the same thing. I will illustrate three main situations in which web designers and users should pay attention to consistency. First, a good website should exhibit a similar layout throughout its pages. In this respect, a good example is theeconomist.com, where all the pages show similar design and colors. On the contrary, the website of The Times changes drastically every time you move from one section to another. Similarly, the websites of MMU Business School displays the first page with a completely different layout compared to all the other pages. It is also important to be consistent with letters, grammar, and language. Look, for example, at the case of this website. The word report is written with a capital letter, while in other parts of the same menu it is written with a lowercase letter. It is important for instruction to be consistent. In the case of this website, the date is shown as day, month, and year. Nevertheless, the table indicates that it should be month, day, and year. This can lead to an easy misunderstanding of the date. Inconsistent links are another problem. Links should always lead straight to the page they indicate. On the Times website, for example, the link to the sitemap brings to an unclear page which creates unnecessary confusion for the user. The next section looks at standards. Looking up again in the dictionary, standard is defined as something established by the authority, custom or general consent as a model or example. We'll now go back to the kitchen to look at some examples of standards. An obvious example is the colors on the tap handles. The red one indicates hot water, while the blue one refers to cold water.
Another example is the energy class of a fridge, which in this instance is A+. This is an energy standard that indicates how much electricity the fridge consumes.
Now back in the web environment, Jakob Nielsen stated in connection to standards that websites should follow platform conventions. Here, the main question is, does this specific website behave the same way as the others? To answer this question, it is essential to know the most frequent standards. One of the most visible standards is to put the website logo in the upper left corner. This can be easily verified by looking at several websites. The following are just a few examples. Ironically, one of the very few websites that does not conform with this standard is this. The homepage of Bernard Madoff, the author of one of the biggest financial frauds in history. However, it should always be remembered that standards change with cultures and languages. For example, many Arabic websites tend to display their logos in the upper right corner, since they read from the right to the left. Another common standard is to use specific symbols to indicate certain actions or options. An example is the shopping cart, a symbol that shows what you are about to buy. Another instance is the simplified pictures of a calendar, to choose a certain date of the year while you book appointments or journeys. It is also usual to employ the so-called three-panel layout. According to this scheme, on the top, a user should see where he or she is. The main body should show the content of the page, and the left side should explain where the user can go from the current page. Another key issue is related to colors. It is standard to indicate with a different color those links that have already been visited by the user. This will ease the process of memory recognition. Moreover, to help colorblind people, colors should be chosen so that the contrast is clear enough. For example, on this website, it is unlikely that a colorblind person will notice the difference between the selected and unselected link. Lastly, precise standards exist also in the case of multimedia features, such as online video players. Precisely, video players should always contain 4 elements: the play and pause button, the scrolling bar, the volume bar, and the indication of the elapsed time. I hope you've learned a bit more about consistency and standards. This podcast has shown the definition of this heuristic as well as some practical examples. To be consistent and to conform to standards is a key element for successful websites. Therefore, it should always be carefully considered.